She's still talking. Mr. Hines. Sorry. It's okay. Mr. Richard. Ms. Qureshi. Mr. Willie. Here. Mr. Matthews. Mr. Davis. Here. Mr. Manella. Here. Mr. Mackey. Here. Mr. Doherty.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Qureshi, will you, let's see, on the public announcements, phones and pagers, let's be sure they're all silenced. As a matter of fact, that reminds me to silence mine. Appeals, there's appeal cards at the end of the road down here. If you don't agree with the commission's decision, then you can certainly appeal it to the council. Speaker cards, again, they're at the down here on the railing. If you want to speak on any of the issues, please fill out one so we have a record of your speaking. Public speaking, each case we get 10 minutes each side and 5 minutes for rebuttal. If after your case is heard, please exit the building. Don't stand out in the lobby area and have conversations, because a lot of that noise will come right back into the chambers here. Please exit the building. Mr. Racy, will you lead us in invocation?
Dear Lord, we thank you for allowing us to gather together, O God. We ask that you be here in our presence. Allow us to use your strength, your power, your wisdom in guiding this meeting. May we have a productive meeting, and may you carry us home safely. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, we have one quick item of new business. Mr. Davis, you want to?
I'd like to make a motion to call up new business for this online ethics training from Mr. Fontenot.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Manella. Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, we've talked about a series of training sessions for the commission after the planning meeting. Because Mr. Matthews is out of town and we do have one vacancy that we hope to fill shortly, I decided to start off the training with the ethics training, which is actually something you would do online on your own time instead of trying to train tonight and then have those two members attend a separate training session. So I did a quick presentation, PowerPoint presentation, so that you can kind of walk you through the signing in and that kind of thing, something very basic, just to try and answer any questions you may have. Beginning this year, all public servants must have a minimum of 1 hour of education in training on the Code of Government Ethics for the state of Louisiana. And you will have to do this every year during your term of office. The Louisiana Ethics Administration provides online training for public servants and elected officials. If you will go to utilize the handout that you have and go to the ethicsstate.la.gov and click on the training session on that page down at the bottom. Try to identify it on the page so it'll be easier for you to find when you get on your computer. This screen will pop up. You will have to register as a first-time user, and once you've registered, you actually can take this training in 3 sessions, 15 to 20 minutes each. So you can go in, you have a little bit of time, go in, do one session, get credit for that, come back later to do the second session. So once you've registered, you just go to the login. You'll have a password and the usual logging in process. Simple basic sheet giving your address, your date of birth, your name, other information that the state needs. And so you will fill that out, move on to a section where it calls for you to add or edit your position. And so you would go to add your position, Planning Commissioner, St. Tammany Parish, some basic information. Here you can see, and it's hard to see on the screen, but mine is level of parish, Planning Director, Parish St. Tammany, and the date that I started in the position. Those of you who are on multiple boards or commissions, you would be able to fill in those multiple boards. So those of you who have already done it, you can go in and edit this position and just fill that in so you get credit for both positions. Then you would move back through the pages until you get to this point. 3 sessions of training. This will be the 2012 Code of Ethics Training for Public Servants. You can see where our circle begins section. Once you complete this section, when you hit begin session, very simple player comes up. It has a pause button, play pause button, closed caption in case you want to play it with, you don't want to play the sound. It has a sound button and a rewind button so you can back up if you miss something or need to listen to something again. Occasionally, to make sure that you're still awake, you will get yes/no questions. They will ask you either yes or no or give you a scenario that you'll be able to answer. In this case, it's asking whether a member of Lasers, which is Louisiana State Retirement System, can go to a pregame tailgate party with some of our friends and who just also happens to be a vendor. That is permissible as long as it just involves food and drink. You will find in another question, another part, that is not permissible to take tickets to the game as part of that activity, but you can, you are allowed to have the food and drinks. Once you complete the section, this screen will pop up. I actually did my 2012 training while creating this PowerPoint slide today. So this will pop up. When you do all 3 sections, you see where you have download certificate. That link opens on the training page, and download your certificate right there. Get a copy to one of our staff members, myself, Ron, or Helen, and we will make sure it gets to legal and get you credit. And that's all there is to it. And that'll be the first hour of your training for the 4 that's required by the parish.
Thank you, Mr. Fontenot.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right, let's see.
If you have any questions about ethics rules, I know normally we have some training sessions, and those of you who come Saturday can ask those same kind of questions. Sometimes there'll be some subtle questions you may have. A situation will come up. Feel free to talk to myself, talk to Mr. Hand, one of the other parish attorneys, and we'll try and steer you in the right direction, make sure you remain within the ethics code.
Sydney,
Yes.
the date started. I'm not sure when I started.
We
So
can probably find out. Call
who we need to
the
call?
office, talk to Cynthia. She can
Okay.
probably pull your file. And they say approximate date.
Thank you, Mr. Fontenot.
No, that was a police jury.
All right, next item on the agenda is approval of the June 12th minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to read over them, see if there's any corrections? Everything all right? Mr. Mackey?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Motion by Mr. Mackey to approve, seconded by Mr. Davis. Please vote. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consent calendar for performance obligations and entering parish right-of-way. Any items not pulled from the consent calendar automatically dispensed by vote as approved and/or as per staff comments. Items pulled from the consent calendar shall be discussed and voted on individually. Staff, you have any to pull?
Yes, sir. Second page under minor subdivisions, all 3 of those items need to be pulled because they require waivers.
Commissioners, if you have any to pull?
Yes, sir. I'd like to pull the first one to enter the parish right-of-way resolution 09-112, purpose of laying and connecting sewer and water lines on Ruby Street.
Which one?
The very first one? Yeah.
Oh, Malleyville?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Dale, thank you. Okay, all right. Any other items that need to be pulled? Do I have a motion on the balance of the consent calendar? Motion by Mr. Davis, second by Mr. Mackey. Please vote. Motion carries. All right, the first item is Malleyville subdivision, Ruby Street, Ward 3, District 3. The amount is $14,000. Expires July 29th, 2012. Debtor is Leroy Laporte Jr. Parish Council District is Honorable Representative is Honorable Red Thompson. Staff,
Catching a cold, maybe.
do you have any comments?
Cold.
Ron?
The above referenced performance obligation expires July 29th, 2012, and is scheduled for review by the Planning Commission at the July 10th, 2012 meeting. The work covered by this obligation has not been completed. However, the petitioner's engineers furnished satisfactory drawings to accomplish the repairs to the sewer line under 12th Street. Approval has been granted to the petitioner, and work is scheduled to be completed within 3 weeks. The performance obligation was established by the Planning Commission on November 10th, 2009, and has been extended for 6-month increments since that date. The developer or petitioner will be advised that he will be required to conform with all current ordinances when applicable as a condition of the extension. Therefore, it is recommended that the performance obligation be extended for a period of 6 months or until the work is satisfactorily accomplished. A warranty obligation in the amount of $10,000 will be established at that time for a period of 5 years, covering the repairs to 12th Street if required.
Mr. Davis, you pull that?
Yeah, the only question I have is that last paragraph where it says, therefore, it's recommended for the performance obligation to be extended for 6 months or until the work is satisfactorily accomplished. Shouldn't there be something in there saying, well, whichever is the shortest time period?
That's the intent of what's said.
Okay, I just didn't know if a legal thing was
Mr.
to be precedent of that, and it just would go on forever, like most of them do.
It should read that, you know, the sooner that it occurs, certainly if they do it in 3 months, then it's done, but it can't go on forever.
Okay.
The maximum time period would be 6 months.
Okay, so so there's nothing that has to be rewritten on this end. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Hines. Please vote. Motion carries. Page 2, under minor subdivisions, MS 12-05-017, a 10.27 acre tract into parcels A through D, Ward 9, District 11. Owner is Gloria Sellers and others. Surveyor is LS Land Surveying LLC. Parish Council District Representative, Honorable Steve Stefancic. This was tabled from the June 12th meeting. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing a minor subdivision to create 5 parcels. The reason for the public hearing is that more than one parcel is being accessed with a private drive. The drive must be constructed to parish standards, and the owner of the property does not wish to construct the drive at this time. That's the reason for the request for the waiver. The owner of the property is proposing to re-subdivide a 10.27 acre tract into a total of 5 parcels and provide access to 3 parcels via a private drive, subject to the owner complied with the minimum construction standards pursuant to section 40-045.01, minimum construction standards for a private drive of subdivision ordinance 499, prior to the survey plat being recorded for public record. However, it's our understanding that the owner either wishes to seek a waiver from the construction standard or wants to delay the construction of same until a later date. The staff, however, does not support this request for a waiver of standards or delay of the road construction, since in our opinion there is no compelling evidence to support such a request. Historically, the Commission on occasion has granted a delay in the construction of a private drive due to extenuating circumstances and conditioned upon the drive being constructed prior to any building permits being filed. However, in any case, the Commission has never granted a waiver of this standard outright. Furthermore, as the staff has mentioned in prior meetings, the time of delay in the owner's filing for a building permit could cause problems with the administration overlooking the required construction of the private drive prior when a building permit is filed. Therefore, the staff suggests that if the Commission decides to grant a delay in the construction of the private drive, upon considering all the facts and circumstances presented, a performance obligation should be established for a minimum of 2 years that would cover the entire cost for the private drive, with the amount of said obligation to be established by the Department of Engineering upon their review of this issue. Additionally, if the Commission decides to grant the minor subdivision request, A waiver of the regulations are required relative to construction standards for the private drive pursuant to Section 40-100 Waiver of Regulations of Subdivision Ordinance 499, which in turn requires two-thirds majority vote of the full membership of the commission, which is 8 members, in order to grant said waiver.
Thank you. Is someone here?
Yes.
Representative?
I'd like to just explain briefly how this,
Please state your name for the record.
my name is Eric Bissell. I represent the owner of the property, which is the estate of Isabel Badon. In the year, this is not just a family coming forward asking that their property be re-subdivided in and of itself. In the year 2010, Isabel Badon, who had several children, knew that she was dying, and in the hospital, she wrote an holographic will, unfortunately, without the participation of legal counsel. This is her will, and on the back of her will, she took the only asset that she really had, which was this 10-acre tract, and asked that it be re-subdivided among her family members, as you can see on the proposed survey, which is very close to what she asked for. The survey meets all of the ordinary requirements that you would have. Our sole stumbling block is Mr. Keller, as he reported to you, said that you don't normally approve these things. The alternative is that this family is going to be forced to lose the property that's been in its family for over 80 years, because the only way they can fulfill the inheritance of the other heirs would be to simply sell the property and distribute the proceeds. Some of the family members own adjacent property that connects to this property, so it would really be to the benefit of all of these individuals if we could get approval for this. We're not trying to slip under the wire or to hope and cross our fingers that when somebody decides to build, that they'll get a building permit without putting in the road. All the members, all the heirs specifically understand that they would not, and there is no judgment of possession signed yet. We're waiting before we seek a judgment of possession, putting the heirs into possession. We would like to put them into possession of the different parcels that's been passed out to you as is proposed. But Mr. Keller has said that he's concerned that, and I can understand this, that perhaps this would slip through the cracks and people wouldn't realize that this was not a legitimately approved subdivision that was subject to the requirement of a road being constructed to minimum parish standards. We understand that this would have to be done, and all the heirs understand that this would have to be done. What we're really asking for is your authority to allow us to put into the petition for possession, for the judgment of possession, and the judgment is the last link in the chain of title. It's the equivalent of a deed. We're asking that we be allowed to put in the judgment in black case lettering a statement that says that there is to be no construction allowed on any portion of that property unless and until the entirety of the subdivision is it carries an improved road as is shown, and will make reference to the recorded subdivision. Now, Mr. Keller also urged that we be required to post a bond, performance bond, in order to do this. That's going to be fatal to this proposal. The reason is there's no other property, a couple of $1,000s. We cannot afford to renew a performance bond over and over and over again. It's really not anticipated that there's going to be any construction on this property for the next several years. And everybody knows that no matter who it is, one individual who wants to improve his lot, he's going to have to see that the entirety of the road is completed. And that's what we're proposing be placed into the judgment of possession. Otherwise, the end effect is going to be that this family is going to end up losing the property. They'll end up with money in their pocket instead of a portion of the title to the family land that they've owned for so long. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have. We're asking for a waiver of the bond.
Okay, commission members, Mr. Davis?
So there's going to be 5 separate owners of these properties? A, B, C, D, and
Some of the owners are going to be combined, in at least one instance, there'll be 2 owners, but they'll be co-owners of property, just as if a husband and wife would be a co-owner. They're just co-heirs. We could only divide it into 5 parcels, and that's what we've left.
Mr. Mackey?
I have a question on here. You said that 3 parcels need the driveway, 2 don't. If you just kind of look at it real quickly, you say A, B, and D need the driveway. C and E done, but it looks like that driveway is gonna run down the length, that panhandle on E there, gonna run through his property.
It is, and the reason we did that was because you'll notice that it's a 2-acre tract, and we thought that possibly in the future, we might want to reapply and ask for a subdivision of that 2-acre tract into a 1-acre tract. We're not doing that, but that's the only reason we decided to extend that right-of-way down to that point. We're not asking for that tonight. We don't want that. That's the lot that's co-owned by these individuals. Could very well be that one will buy out the other, but that should have no effect or influence, I don't think, on what we're proposing.
Let me ask Ron on this. Is the proposed driveway is not up to parish standards, is that correct? They
No.
show 35 feet of
Yeah,
right-of-way.
that is the minimum requirement for a minor subdivision, which is what they're proposing to do. Our concern is obviously is that they don't want to construct the road now. And we want to put a bond on to ensure that we'll have something in place in case something happens. Because, you know, again, if 4 or 5 years goes by and they want to sell these parcels maybe to an outsider, they come in for a building permit, there's going to be checks and balances. It's very difficult for the permit office to find out what stipulations are on those roads. And permits could be issued without the road being constructed, and that's what our concern is, and that's why we request that. But as far as the actual roadway right-of-way and the 20-foot wide surface that's required, they would meet that standard. They simply don't want to build it now and build it later. Again, I would state that if this commission decides to consider that waiver, and if they decide to waive the bond requirement, it's not really a waiver, it's just a suggestion of the staff to require the bond. But if you decide to go ahead and not require that bond, at the very minimum, like Rick had stated, we'd like a stipulation on the plat that states that no building permits can be issued until that road has been completed and constructed to parish standards, as well as putting in each individual deed and title that same reflection.
We'll put it on the plat, and we'll put it in the judgment of possession, and we will have the petition for possession verified by each of the individual heirs. Everybody will have full notice, no cause for any complaint that they did not know about this. And one of your requirements, of course, is before you issue a building permit, that you get a copy, that Ron's office receive a copy of the deed. It's going to be there, unmistakable, right across the face of it.
Okay. Well, I got 2 more people getting ready to talk. I was going to go ahead and make a motion to approve it, but it would be that, as Mr. Keller said, that it would be very clear.
Yes.
In the titles that no construction
I'd be
permit.
willing to submit that to his prior approval before the judgment of possession is signed, so he could see and approve that. You could make that part of your motion.
That is part of the motion, then he accepts it.
Therese?
Celeste, I'm just trying to understand, excuse my lack of knowledge here when it comes to the judgment of possession, but if you're not going to make any improvements in the near future, is it because this is not equally subdivided that you have to have this in the judgment of possession? Or could that just be part of the judgment of possession that they all own this land?
Well, we can't do that. It's already been subdivided among the individual heirs that they get different portions. We'd be ignoring the will, which has already been probated.
Oh,
We
I
have
see.
to
I
obey
see.
the tenets of the will. I understand what you're proposing.
Uh-huh.
Just let everybody continue on as co-owner.
Right.
That creates a myriad of problems, too. As generations go on and you have additional deaths in the family,
I gotcha.
the problem becomes exponentially more difficult
I
because
gotcha.
then you have tens of people owning one piece of
I
property.
understand. Okay, gotcha.
So, yes, ma'am.
Martha?
Ron, I was going to ask Ron, just to make sure that I understand that the construction, since this is a minimum, a private drive, that means that the parish would not be required to maintain it?
That's correct.
So,
But again, the minimum standards are established so that we ensure that the road will be
Will be-
maintained to a point so the parish doesn't have to take it over at some point in the
exactly.
future.
Okay. So if, and we're looking at, you said some of the owners, they have land, they own land connected to this?
Some do, yes.
On the side,
For example,
obviously,
side
the
E.
railroad's on one side.
Not on that side, but on
on the
for
other
example,
side.
side E. Side E is, one of the heirs owns the property immediately adjacent to and abutting E.
This is an old established family. The Badons have been here for as long as I can remember. But I concur, as long as Ron is satisfied with identifying what they need and require on the plat, as you said, then I have no problem. I'll make a motion to approve, subject to, you might want to state it again, Ron.
Mr.
Oh,
Willie?
you second it? You made the motion? Okay, I'll second it.
Mr. Willie?
Another
whoever.
question. Well, who would share in the cost of the road being built?
The road
Suppose
is-
you got, one guy he wants to build a house, but he really can't afford this road. And two other guys want to build a house, but they just want to put all the burden on the first guy. I mean, how are they going to share that cost?
Well, no one will be able, under any circumstances or argument, be able to construct the road until it's absolutely fully paid for. After that, it becomes a problem between themselves as to how they want to do this. But I can tell you that it would probably be done on an access basis with everybody participating. I would think they're all 5 individuals that probably participate. I don't think it behooves us at that point to get into that. They just know that they have a collective responsibility that no individual, if somebody wants to use that road, for example, if somebody who owns Lot D wants to use that road, he's going to have to repair to his relatives and get their participation, and if he doesn't construct. He can't, because he won't be able to do it. And they all know that, and that's going to be set out in the judgment of possession.
Okay, that's what I was getting into.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that going to be part of their mandated to them, like after the first guy pays for the cost, the other ones have to share in the cost as they build, right?
Well, I don't want to put in there that we can make anybody do this, make anybody pay. It's just that whoever decides to put in that road, they're looking at construction of the entirety of the road. So basically, what's going to happen is they're probably going to decide to do it all at one
It
time.
sounds like creating some unneighborly type situation here to
Well,
me, so.
it's a family. They've been together a long time, and I think they've settled their problems so far. And I think we'll be able to take care of that fact.
You can just write something
Turn your mic on.
I'd put,
outside of this.
right. Yeah, that's within the family. We can do that in their own side agreement.
Okay, any more questions? We have a motion by Mr. Mackey and second by Ms. Casabon. Please vote. You've got to have 8 affirmative votes on this one. And we have 8, motion carries. Thank you.
I thank you for your due consideration. Thank you.
All right, the next one is MS 12-06-020, a 2-acre parcel into parcels A and B, Ward 6, District 11. Owner is Anthony and Lisa Millette. J.B. Burks is a surveyor. Parish Council District is Honorable Steve Stefancic. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposal as a minor subdivision for 2 lots, from 1 into 2 lots. The reason for the request for the reason for the waiver requirement is the proposed lots do not meet the minimum lot width requirement of the zoning of that area, which is A2, which is 150-foot minimum. If you look on the survey plats attached, each one proposed is going to be approximately 104.2 feet in width on the public road. The owner is proposing to create the 2 parcels from 1 parcel. Both parcels meet the minimum 1 acre requirement for an A2 suburban zoning. However, the lot widths do not meet the minimum 150-foot required. Although the lots do not meet the minimum standards, the fact is that there are already 2 existing homes on this property. Therefore, by dividing the tracts into 2 parcels in order to provide the homes each with their own individual parcel will not affect the density of the property, since they can't add any additional improvements. Therefore, for the reasons stated, the staff has no objection to the proposed minor subdivision request. However, the commission decides to grant that the minor subdivision request, a waiver of the regulations is required, which requires 8 votes.
Thank you. Anthony or Lisa Millette here? Please come up. State your name.
Floyd Millette. I'm here for my son Anthony and my daughter-in-law Lisa. This property, we have 2 homes on it. One is my son's house, the other is mine. The property was purchased after Katrina. The 2 acres, we built 2 homes on it, and we would just like to split it in half so that I have my property with my home and he has his property with his home. I have a picture of the property if you'd like to see it, with the homes already built on it.
Okay, Mr. Willie?
Question of staff. Just on the plat, it looks like the driveway is mostly on one of the lots. Is that, if they do separate lots, would they have to change the configuration of the driveway any?
Not really. I mean, if they want to, they can, but
Yeah.
it's pre-existing conditions.
Mr. Mackey?
That was my question also. I'll go ahead and make it, well,
Mr. Davis?
Kaz has a,
Go ahead, you can make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. This takes 8 votes also. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next item is minor subdivision 12-06-021, a 0.72 acre parcel in the parcels A and B, Ward 10, District 6. Owner is E.H. Pooled 811 LP. Surveyor John Cummings and Associates. Council District's Honorable Richard Tanner. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, this is a proposal of splitting the property into two parcels. The reason for the requirement for the public hearing is that the minimum lot area requirement of 1 acre is not being met. The owner of the property is creating, as you indicate, if you could look at your copy of your survey attached to the report, creating 2 smaller parcels from 1 parent parcel. Even though the proposed lots are small compared to the minimum 1 acre requirement, the fact is that there are already 2 existing homes on this property. Therefore, by dividing the tracts into 2 parcels in order to provide the homes each with their own individual parcel will not affect the density of the property. Therefore, for the reasons stated, the staff has no objection to the proposed minor subdivision request. As before, it requires a waiver of at least 8 votes. Forget the waiver.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Jeff Shane of Jones Fussell, and I represent the petitioner in this matter. The only other thing I would add that might be of interest to you is that these 2 homes are post-Katrina rehabilitation projects. So the 2 structures were in existence. They were decimated by the storm. My client has purchased the land, is in the process of rehabilitating these structures. Obviously, to put them back in commerce, he'd like to sell them or lease them, but they need to be 2 lots of record. I might add that there were some other structures, encroachments beyond the property line that have been removed, demolished as we got into this process with Mr. Keller to kind of clean things up, so that at the end of the day, we should have, rather than 2 abandoned, dilapidated structures, we'll have 2 refinished and current code structures that would hopefully be a nice complement to the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there any opposition present? I'll turn it over to the commissioners.
I'll make a
Mr.
motion.
Davis?
Yeah, is this correct? It's not A3 though, it's A2.
Yeah, it's 8.
Okay, so the A3 is just a misprint on the, okay, thank you.
Ms. Casabon?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Casabon to approve, seconded by Mr. Willie. This one also takes an 8 vote. Please vote. Mr. Hines? There, he voted, okay. Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is entering Tammany Trace, TRC 12-07-001, a request to bore under Tammany Trace for the purpose of installing a gas pipeline. The approximate location of the work is located near Bayou Castine, where it crosses the Trace on the south side of US 190, Mandeville, Louisiana, Ward 4, District 7. The petitioner is Parkway Pipeline, LLC. The Parish Council District Representative is the Honorable Jacob Groby. Staff?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, like I say, this is a Parkway Pipeline LLC. They are requesting permission to bore under the Tammany Trace for the purpose of installing a gas pipeline. Although the staff report shows that we don't have any comments, we actually do have some comments we'd like to make that we didn't have a chance to revise the report. I'd like to go ahead and read those now. The staff has no issues with this and would recommend approval subject to these five items. A, the trace shall not be closed or obstructed for more than 1 hour at any time during construction. B, Parkline Pikeway LLC provide the parish with a hold harmless agreement in favor of the parish, which they have done, so that item is taken care of. C, all construction on the trace shall occur only Mondays through Friday, no weekends. D, the trace must be kept clean and free of debris at all times. And E, Parkway Pipeline LLC shall procure written approval from the Tammany Trace Supervisor to conduct work.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. I see some folks out here from the pipeline. Any of y'all want to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, Alan Four on behalf of Kinder Morgan. We will construct and operate Parkway Pipeline. The items outlined by staff are certainly acceptable to us.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to the commission. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, one question, sir. So how big is the actual hole going to be drilled?
Well, Jeff Benefield, our environmental manager, will answer that question.
I'm Jeff Benefield, Parkway Pipeline. Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
How big is the actual diameter of the hole that's going to be drilled horizontally under the trace?
The diameter of the pipe is 16-inch, so the annular space around that is about 20, about an extra 2 or 3 inches around the hole to get the pipe in.
Okay, and according to this letter, it says you really won't have to close the trace. Is that correct?
That is correct. Normally, normally it backfills naturally with the soil around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was my question, because I know sometimes they close the trace and they don't make anybody aware of these things, and then now somebody's on the trace, and the next thing you know, it's closed. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I was thinking the construction. No, we'll not have to close the trace at all.
So the trace will be.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Davis to approve. Mr. Mackey?
I just have one brief question. When you bore under the trace like that, how do you compress the soil above the pipeline so that the trace doesn't sag and crack or whatever?
Mm-hmm. So this, the technique they use here is called horizontal directional drilling. So it's not anything where you need to recompact the soil on top. So they bore from one side through the other, and then they actually string the pipe out on another side and pull it back through, and then connect it into the adjacent pipe. So there really isn't any compaction or any surface disturbance where they need to go back and then compact around the actual pipe.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Davis, second by Mr. Richard. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you.
All right, next item, preliminary subdivision review. SD 12-04-002P, North Park, Phase 4, Ward 3, District 5. Developer owner is Mikado LLC and Rudigore LLC. The engineer is Scalfino Engineering. Parish Council District's Honorable Marty Gould. Mr. Shane. Excuse me, staff comment?
Department of Engineering, the preliminary plans and hydrologic study have been reviewed by this office and inspection was made at the site. It is recommended that preliminary submittal be approved subject to the following. The drainage arrow for Lot 1 doesn't match the hydrological study. Provide culvert calculations in Lot 2. The proposed double barrel 36-inch RCPA doesn't appear to have sufficient cover to bury the pipe in the rear as this area proposed to be filled. Off-site hydrological calculations must be done for the 100-year storm event. Also, the summary doesn't appear to match the off-site calculations. As this development is within Gravity Drainage District 5, we will require comments from them to be submitted. Prior to issuance of a work order, the detailed design of the con-span bridge system or equal must be furnished to the Department of Engineering for review and approval. All culverts under the roadway shall be RCP. All PVC culverts shall conform to DOTD standards. A note must be shown on the drawings. Need a striping plan for both the roadways and roundabout. Sheet SL1 was not included in the resubmittal. Roundabout shall function as a roundabout and shall be signed and striped as such, since traffic studies showed a roundabout and federal regulations maintain that all signage conform to MUTCD standards, both in private and public subdivisions. Add a stop sign on Sullivan Lane at its intersection with Greengate Drive / Village Lane West. Sheet SL1 was not included in the resubmittal. The turn lane on US 190 shall conform to DOTD standards and requirements and is sole responsibility of the developer. This shall be stated on the plans. Detailed plans of the turn lane as approved by DOTD will be required before a work order is issued. A driveway permit from DOTD is required. Referring to the section at the bridge with an 8% max grade, engineer shall verify that no sightline issues will exist. No maintenance obligation is required since access is from a state highway or private roadway. No mandatory developmental fee is required at final submittal in accordance with Ordinance 499 since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005.
Plans and specifications for the construction of the project's water distribution lines and sewer collection lines have not yet been approved by the Department of Health and Hospitals as required. No work order will be issued until the plans and specifications have been approved by the DHH.
Mr. Keller, you have no comments, right?
No comments.
Okay. Mr. Shane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Shane of Jones Fussell. I represent the owner and developer, which is Mikado LLC and Rutagore LLC. I would imagine all of you remember the tentative subdivision approval that we procured from you probably in May, April or May. And since that time, I guess the staff comments certainly are suggestive of the things that we have been able to develop and incorporate into the plan. I think there's three primary statements that I'd like to make this evening that may assist you in reviewing this matter. Number one, we are in full accord with all of the staff comments, and it is my understanding that all of the technical revisions and things of that nature have in fact been performed and submitted. Perhaps they have not been submitted timely such that the engineering department could review them, but I want you to know that each and every item we have no problem with. Now, we do not have the driveway permit yet from LADOTD, but we certainly understand that that's something we have to procure and that the turn lanes are certainly at our expense. So we have take no exception with any item that any of the staff comments suggest. Second item that I think would be of significance to you is that you may remember that during the presentation of tentative, I discussed with you the fact that this commission had previously revoked a portion of 19th Avenue and East Street. And if you will look at the subdivision drawing, you will see that the spoke, as I refer to it, meaning Village Lane East, coming out of the roundabout, that was not on the tentative plat because at that time the revocation had not been accomplished. So I wanted you to be aware of the fact that this phase now does in fact have two connectors to the south to the existing section of the developed subdivision. And thirdly, with regard to the request that we meet with the Drainage District and their engineer, as late as 4 o'clock this afternoon, our engineers, Scalfano and Associates, in particular Mr. Alex Williams, who's here with me this evening, met with Jean Thibodeau, a former parish engineer who is now the engineer for this drainage district, and he has approved the plans that we have submitted from the drainage district's perspective. It's my understanding that he has so indicated in email. I don't know if Mr. Carroll has received that yet or not, perhaps not since the meeting was late today, but I wanted you to know that he did not have any items of complaint or any items that he wanted us to add. So we think we have the project in good shape. We're looking forward to making this exciting addition to North Park to bring more business opportunities to our parish. If any of you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Is there any opposition? Turn it over to the commission. Any questions? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, Jeff, I really like the turnabout. It really solved your little situation you had with the one entrance in and out with that. So
great.
I like that. I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Davis to approve. We have a second by Mr. Mackey. Ms. Casabon? Do you have a question? Okay. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item is subdivision 08-04-005, P2 and 3. The villages at Bocage, Phase 2 and 3, Ward 1, District 1. Developer and owner is First Horizon Incorporated. The engineer is Rensselaer Engineering and Consulting, LLC. Parish Council District Representatives, Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
The revised preliminary plans have been reviewed by this office and inspections made of the site. It is recommended that the revised preliminary submittal be approved subject to the following. The proposed ditches in the green space areas will require a 20-foot setback for all permanent structures, including fences and driveways in accordance with parish requirements. Provide revised driveway culvert calculations for areas where the flow in the ditch have significantly changed due to rerouted drainage in the revised drawings. The drainage arrows for some of the green spaces show off-site discharge. This is inconsistent with the previous approved hydrologic study. Covenant number 6 should include a requirement that all finished floor elevations must be 1 foot above the crown of the road. A funded maintenance obligation in the amount of $10,000 is required in accordance with subdivision 499, section 406108, funded letter of credit for existing parish roads to ensure the repair of any damage to parish roads resulting from construction activity in connection with this subdivision. Mandatory developmental fees will be required at final submittal in accordance with ordinance 499 since no public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005.
Plans and specifications for the construction of the project's water distribution lines and sewer collection lines have not yet been approved by the Department of Health and Hospitals as required. No work order will be issued until the submitted plans and specifications are approved by DHH.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Paul Marone on behalf of the petitioner First Horizon, Inc. You may recall, some of you may recall, that this project was ultimately approved through zoning and through preliminary, I believe back in 2007. The first phase was built. What you have before you tonight is a revision to the preliminary that had been previously granted. And the basis or the reason for that is that in developing out the first phase, there were certain products or certain lot sizes that were more in demand for the residents in that area. These phases had lots that measured from 40 feet wide to 50 feet wide. What we found, or what the developer found in the prior phases, was that there was more demand for the 50s and the 60s. So we have amended the plan. The street layout has remained the same, and we have simply increased the width of the lots. Originally on the plan, we had 205 lots in phases 2 and 3. On the plan before you now, there's 177 lots. So we kept everything the same. We simply increased the lot sizes based on the demand that was out there, believing that that will be a better product and a product that is more desired by the residents. We've looked at the staff comments, talked with the engineer and the developer. We have no concern or problem with any of the comments that are left on the list. All of those items can be taken care of very quickly. We intend to do that if it is the Commission's desire to approve our submittal this evening. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you, Mr. Marone. I'm going to ask you a question on the maintenance of the retention pond.
Yes.
It says the homeowners association. I'm taking that since they're going to have a, I'm going to call it a significant investment in maintaining this, that there are mandatory homeowners association fees.
There is. There are extensive covenants in place that that mandate the homeowners association, which has been created, and dues are required, and there are mechanisms for the collection and enforcement of that provision.
Okay. Ms. Casbon?
Yes, it's unusual to have them come in and increase the size of the lot, so, and to reduce the number. So I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Casabon, second by Mr. Hines.
Subject to all staff comments.
Yeah, Paul, just one itty bitty little thing. I like your walking path, the way it's designed through the subdivision.
Yes.
Where the walking path ends, right behind lot 120, or is that going to continue around the lot and connect to the other side between 119 and 143?
Let's see, give me a moment to find you.
It's on Chambly Court. What, that just ends there? Is that what the, or is it going to be like a circular thing where they start walking back?
It appears that it ends. However, I think that's in error.
Okay.
I believe that it is going to continue and connect across Chambly Court to pick up on the other side.
I thought so. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mackey?
Yes, Paul.
Yes, sir.
Continuing this thing on the pond, is that going to be a dry or a wet pond?
I believe those are wet ponds. I'm looking to Mr. Pagoda to verify that. Sorry, they're dry.
They're dry, so, okay.
Be able to
That
collect it.
eliminates some other problems.
Correct. It's a little bit easier to maintain that way.
Right. Plus kids and.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is final subdivision review. Subdivision 04-08-024, F1D1, Betico Creek, Phase 1, D1, Ward 1, District 1. Developer owner is Betico Creek, Betico Interest LLC. Engineer is Resler Engineering LLC. Parish Council District is the Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction. Final inspection was made on June 27, 2012. The inspection disclosed that all asphalt roads are constructed, road shoulders are constructed, and roadside ditches are functioning. The following uncompleted items exist at time of final inspection. A and B are complete. C, street name signs are needed, traffic signs are needed, blue reflectors are needed. Paving and drainage plan needs to be revised as follows. Show tabulation of driveway culvert size, type, and material required. Show roadside ditch invert elevations at each property corner. Subdivision plat needs to be revised as follows. Show tabulation of driveway culvert sizes and types of material required. Show 911 addresses on each lot. Remove note regarding concrete roadway alternative from all drawings. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of $50,400 for a period of 5 years. The staff recommends approval of the proposed final subdivision request subject to the developer complying with all comments and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. No mandatory developmental fees are required since a public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Doherty, members of the commission, Wayne Burris representing the petitioner. We're requesting final approval, and in the last several days, a number of the items that Mr. Carroll has gone over have now been provided, understanding that they have not had an opportunity to actually review them. But to go down the list, the base tests have now been provided to the parish along with the asphalt test, which should take care of items A and B. The next three items, the C, D, and E, the street signs were basically a special order item that is on order and is scheduled to be done hopefully in the next 30 days. But what we have requested is that temporary signs be put up, and they should be put up by the end of the week. Mr. Glass is handling that. Kenny Glass's company, and they're telling me that they'll be in by the end of the week. On the next item dealing with the paving and drainage plan, the project has underground drainage, and the engineer is telling me that item 1, which would be F1, would not be applicable because there are no culverts being installed since there's underground drainage. Item number 2, I have a report from Mr. Fonkeberter that item has been completed. Item G, culvert sizes, again, same comment as on F1, that there's underground drainage that fronts the lot, therefore there would not be a culvert sizing. Item number 2, the 911 addresses. I've also seen a modification to the plan where Mr. Fonkeberter has added the 911 addresses to a plan and has forwarded that to the parish. And he's also removed the note regarding the concrete roadway. The balance of the comments, we're in agreement to furnish the letter of credit that's required. And subject to those comments, we've made a significant effort here, and I guess the last 4 or 5 days, the engineers and the contractor have gone forward to attempt to complete as many of the items as possible. We would request a final approval, and also point out that there are some pending purchase agreements, and we would, and the developer would appreciate being able to receive a final approval, complete these last few items, and allow us to go to sale on some of these lots. Thank you. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. Ms. Casabon?
I don't have any questions. Do you want me to
Okay,
make a
you had your
motion
light
to
on,
approve?
so.
A motion to approve, subject to all staff comments and that.
Motion to approve by Ms. Casabon, second by Mr. Hines. Are there any more questions? I do have a question on the street signs, since these are going to be public streets.
No, they're private streets.
They're private streets.
Yes,
So
sir.
the owners are going to be required to maintain the street signs.
Correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's see, next item is SD 0408-024 F1D2, Beatico Creek, Phase 1 D2, Ward 1, District 1. Developer owner is Beatico Interest LLC, engineer Resilier Engineering and Consulting LLC. Parish Council District is the Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction. The final inspection was made on June 27, 2012. The inspection disclosed that all asphalt roads are constructed, road shoulders are constructed, and roadside ditches are functioning. The following uncompleted items exist at the time of the final inspection. A and B are complete. Street name signs are needed, traffic signs are needed, blue reflectors are needed. Paving and drainage plan needs to be revised as follows. Swale invert elevation at each property corner. Subdivision plat needs to be revised as follows. Show 911 addresses on each lot. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of $20,800 for a period of 5 years. Staff recommends approval of the proposed final subdivision request, subject to the developer complying with all comments, and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. No mandatory developmental fees are required since the public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005.
Thank you. Mr. Burris.
Mr. Doherty, members of the commission, Wayne Burris representing the petitioner. The comments on to these staff comments are very similar to the previous case. The base test and the asphalt test have been delivered. The street signs should be in by the end of the week. Actually, the blue reflectors on both phases are in according to the contractor. The swale invert elevations on each property corner, that item has been taken care of, as well as the 911 addresses by Mr. Fonkeberta. That has been furnished in an email transmission and will be followed up by hard copies. And subject to the staff comments and also my comments, this is a phase that is adjacent to the previous phase that was approved, and we would request a final approval on this.
Okay. Ms.
Make a
Casabon?
motion to approve.
Pardon?
Celeste, she made a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is SD 04-08-024 F1D4, Beatico Creek, Phase 1 D4, Ward 1, District 1. Developer owner Beatico Interest LLC, engineer is Resilier Engineering and Consulting LLC. Parish Council District is Honorable Marty Dean. Staff?
Periodic inspections have been made by this office during construction, and the final inspection was made on June 27, 2012. The inspection disclosed that all asphalt roads are constructed, road shoulders are constructed, and roadside ditches are functioning. The following uncompleted items exist at the time of final inspection. A and B are complete. Street name signs are needed, traffic signs are needed, blue reflectors are needed. Should the Planning Commission approve the request for final approval, a warranty obligation will be required for the infrastructure in the amount of $51,900 for a period of 5 years. The staff recommends approval of the proposed final subdivision request subject to the developer complying with all comments and no plats to be signed until all items are satisfactorily completed. No mandatory developmental fees are required since the public hearing was held prior to January 1st, 2005, and no lots are in this phase.
Mr. Daugherty, members of the commission, Wayne Burris representing the petitioner. The comments to the first two cases would carry over to the staff comments here. They're basically the same. We're in agreement to provide the letter of credit requested and would request a final approval on this road section.
Thank you, Mr. Beers. Turn it over to the commission.
I move to be approved.
Motion to approve by Mr. Hines, seconded by Mr. Richard. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Old business, subdivision 01-03-004-F, Serenity Oaks, Ward 9, District 11. Developer owner is Merlin Herberger Jr. Engineer is Kelly McHugh Associates. Parish Council District Representative is Honorable Steve Stefancic. Request to amend restrictive covenants pursuant to the Act of Amendment. Staff?
Yeah, this is basically a letter. You have one lot owner who is trying to accomplish improvements on his lot that conflict with a note on the recorded plat that requires basically no more than 12 inches of fill in the yard and 24 inches for the foundation of the house. As an alternative, he's wanting to comply with the no net fill ordinance, which would protect the floodplain but not have the same height restrictions on fill, where he could fill certain portions of the lot and cut other portions of the lot and show that he's mitigated the fill. If you see the second page, there's a letter from Paul Marone where they propose an alternative wording where it says no fill deeper than 12 inches can be placed on these lots except in accordance with applicable provisions of Chapter 7 Drainage Flood Control. It goes on. And my one concern about the wording of that, it says no fill deeper than 12 inches. Right now, people are allowed 24 inches for the foundation only. And if we accept this, it would take away that option to the remaining undeveloped lots.
Mr. Marone?
Thank you, Mr. Daugherty. Paul Marone on behalf of the petitioner. With regards to Mr. Carroll's concern, we would have no objection to amending the language that is proposed to address that. It really wasn't our intent to exclude the fill and the foundation. Our focus has been outside of the foundation, and so when this language was drafted, I really just didn't have that in mind. But I certainly would be willing to amend that to address his concern and provide that back to him. Just to give you a little background, this is a small subdivision of 12 lots located in the Slidell area, and again, my client is trying to construct his home. He has a lot that falls off, and he would like to fill a portion of that lot in accordance with the existing fill ordinances. However, back when this subdivision was approved in 2001, the parish did not have the extensive fill ordinances that are in place now. So at that time, I believe that's how this note, it's not part of the restrictive covenants, there is just a note on the plat that references this fill limitation. However, with the progression of the engineering staff and the ordinances in the parish, we now have a fill ordinance that goes well beyond whether you can place fill there. I mean, there are hydrological studies required, there are analyses that have to be performed, and what we're proposing is language that really updates what's on the plat and brings it into where we are now, which in our view and in the view of our engineer really is a better process and has better provisions for not only the landowner in question, but also for the surrounding area, because it looks at the entire area to determine if, in fact, there would be a negative impact. So we have met at length with Mr. Johnny Bordelon, the head of engineering. He's been out to the site twice. We've met with councilmen and, well, several councilmen in that area because it's near one of the district lines. So we've taken a great deal of time to be careful with what we're doing, to make sure that what we're doing is acceptable to the engineering staff, to the councilmen, and we believe that we've done that. We've captured that with the amendment that Mr. Carroll has suggested. So we would respectfully request the ability to amend the plat to the language that you see as amended by Mr. Carroll's statements.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barone.
Thank you.
Mr. Mackey?
If you're happy then with those changes, modification to the fill thing, I make a motion to approve then with those additions.
Motion by Mr. Mackey, seconded by Ms. Casabon. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, my only question is, again, this is not just for this one person's lot, correct? This would be for the whole, for that whole subdivision plat Serenity Oaks.
Correct. It would apply to all the lots. Basically, when somebody goes to improve a lot, they would have the option of either following the old requirement or
a new
the modern ordinance, whatever it is at the time they apply for the permit.
Okay, any more questions for Mr. Morone or staff? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
New business, we had one item under new business. Any other new business? Motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
It's accepted.